I'm Thomas, and I'm a sex researcher. And surprise, I'm also a murderino. Yeah, for the past few months, I have been working my way through all of the back episodes of My Favorite Murder. And now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's a podcast where two very cool women named Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark discuss, well, their favorite murders. One thing that sometimes comes up is the fact that some of the murderers have sex with the bodies after they've killed them. It should go without saying this, but obviously this is f***ed up in many ways. But it is a real thing. And when I started to read up on it a bit more, I found that it's a lot more complicated than I originally thought. In this video, I'm going to talk about exactly what it is, what it isn't, a bit about the history, and end with treatments. Because yeah, along with being gross, it's also considered a mental disorder. And if you're someone who maybe struggles with these urges or thoughts, I would hope that you'll get help before you act on them. Don't be a monster. Necrophilia, or the sexual attraction to or sexual acts involving corpses, is a real thing. So real, in fact, it's even in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM. It can be found under other specified paraphilic disorders. These are not specific to necrophilia, but include sexual thoughts or behaviors that cause marked distress or impairment in important areas of functioning. Before I jump in any further, I want to point out there is obviously a huge difference between fantasizing about something and actually doing it. Sure, fantasizing about it might mean that there are some other things you may want to seek help for or talk to someone about, but actually engaging in the behavior is far worse. Necrophilia is very rare, well, arguably. The thing is the prevalence is debatable, and current figures argue 0 to 5% of the total population, which is either very few or a shockingly large amount. Why the huge discrepancy? Well, most of the behaviors are carried out in secret, and obviously the victim isn't able to report the behavior, and perpetrators aren't reporting themselves. In a review by Rossman and Resnick, published in the Journal of the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law, they point to 122 cases, 88 from world literature and 34 from unpublished sources. The majority of the perpetrators are white males in their 30s, and some of these go as far back as King Herod, or Herod the Great, who reportedly continued to have sex with his wife for 7 years after he killed her. In times where corpses were known to be transported for burial across seas, sailors were also known, and some even encouraged, to enact in necrophilia as a way of dealing with loneliness. Currently, the majority of necrophiliacs are theoretically working in funeral homes, which makes sense for obvious reasons. Now, I'm not suggesting that all funeral workers are necrophiliacs. I'm just saying that what research says and what makes sense. And of course, serial killers. Now, as I was saying earlier, necrophilia is in the DSM. Further, there is a 10-tier classification system of necrophilia that was published in the Journal of Forensic and Legal Medicine. The information I'm going to provide you can be found in this article titled A New Classification of Necrophilia and the Rossman article mentioned above. But I'm also going to include where some of your favorite murderers may have fallen, which is a few tiers deep, as the first few don't actually involve murders. This is honestly much more of a spectrum of behavior than I anticipated, and ranges from thoughts and fantasies all the way to murder and actual penetration. Class 1, role players. People who get aroused from pretending their live partner is dead during sexual activity, but they do not actually have sex with someone who is dead. Examples provided by the authors include the partner wearing white makeup to appear more pale, perhaps beginning the role play in a plastic bag with a toe tag, having sex in a coffin, or even engaging in a resurrection fantasy where one of the partners enacts a scene of bringing the other to life, and then they have sex. Of course. This is really more of a fetish than anything to do with murder. Mr. Ted Bundy's fiancée Elizabeth reported that he liked her to pretend she was dead, or he wouldn't be able to orgasm. That's not all for Ted. We're going to talk about him more later. Also, I could totally see resurrection play being used in some cults. These leaders love this stuff where they're the divine and able to bring people back from the dead. So yeah, if that's happening to you, call your dad. You're in a cult. Class 2. Romantic necrophiliacs, bereaved people who remain attached to their dead lover's body. The researchers state these are the normal bereaved people who cannot bear separation from their loved ones. They do not seem to agree that their loved ones have died. They mummify their loved one's dead body or parts of them and continue to relate sexually to them as much as they did in life. The researchers also state that there are no cases on record where people have been prosecuted for this. Again, not up to murderers yet, but definitely on our way. So class 1 and 2 are very different from the next classes, so this is a warning. If you have a weak stomach, it gets so much worse. Class 3, necrophilic fantasizers. People who fantasize about necrophilia but never actually have sex with a corpse. These are people who may become aroused at the sight of a coffin or corpse but never actually touch the corpse. There have even been cases reported of people going to funerals to masturbate among the crowd of mourners. Specifically, in the late 90s, this was happening pretty frequently at a morgue in Paris. Class 4, tactile necrophiliacs. People who are aroused by touching or stroking a corpse without engaging in intercourse. The authors report these are people who may enjoy stroking parts of the dead body. This could include the genitalia, the breasts, perhaps even licking them. They even mention a story in which a medical student became erect during a dissection of a corpse and argue this would fall into this category. Again, sort of makes you wonder how people get into the professions they do get into. Class 5. Fetishistic necrophiliacs. People who remove objects, for example panties, a tampon, or a body part, perhaps a finger, genitalia, from a corpse for sexual purposes without engaging in intercourse. A big difference here between people in the class 2 romantic necrophiliacs is the emotional connection to the person while they were living. Someone who is a fetishistic necrophiliac is willing to take an object or body part from any random corpse. Class 6, necromotilomaniacs. People who derive pleasure from mutilating a corpse while masturbating without engaging in intercourse. Yeah, not much more to say about that. If you really want a disgusting read, check out that Rossman paper cited below. Class 7, opportunistic necrophiliacs. People who normally have no interest in necrophilia, but take the opportunity when it arises. Now, the researchers did not report names, but they did elaborate on a few cases. The first included a man who accidentally killed his wife, became sexually aroused while attempting to dispose of the body, and, well, had sex with it. In the other, a man killed his wife out of jealousy because she was having an affair and then had sex with her after she was dead. He stated that it wasn't because she was dead that he did it, but rather that she had been denying him sex for years. I mean, I don't know. Both of them are pretty out there. Class 8, regular necrophiliacs. You know, just the regular ones. People who prefer to have intercourse with the dead. The researchers state they would not enjoy sexual intercourse with the living, even if the choice were available to them. Instead, they would seek out a dead body to have sexual intercourse with because they get more pleasure in having sex with a dead body. Although the majority of perpetrators are males, Rosman and Resnick described a 21-year-old white woman who, over the course of working for 4 months as an embalmer, had sexual intercourse with an estimated 20 to 40 corpses. This was someone with an extensive sexual trauma history, and not everyone who has been sexually victimized goes on to victimize others. However, if you have been a victim, please seek help. Class 9, homicidal necrophiliacs. People who commit murder in order to have sex with the victim. This is where a lot of the people from My Favorite Murder would fall. Serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer was believed to be in this category, and additionally, he was aroused by just pieces of the human body and dead animals. Also, Gary Leon Ridgway, the Green River Killer. He murdered mostly sex workers and teenage runaways, would leave their bodies, and then return back to them later to have sex with them. I mean, a real dirtbag. And of course, a lot of people's favorite, Mr. Ted Bundy, who would reportedly drop his victims' bodies off and then visit them multiple times, applying makeup and having sex with them. It was also believed that he would behead some of his victims and then just take the heads home and use them for sexual pleasure detached from the body. I wonder if they're gonna leave that in the Zac Efron movie. I'm guessing not. And lastly, Class 10, exclusive necrophiliacs. People who have an exclusive interest in sex with the dead and cannot perform at all for a living partner. The authors state these people are the rarest and not necessarily the most dangerous of all classes, but rather Class 10 because they need only dead bodies for intercourse and couldn't perform for the living. As you now know, this is a lot more complicated than you may have first thought, and there are very few treatments currently available, mostly due to the rarity, but also the shame and silence surrounding the urges. If there's a key to overcoming these urges, it might be found in the reasons perpetrators have reported for engaging in them. The majority report being motivated by a desire for an unresisting and unrejecting partner. And other reasons include wanting a reunion with a lost partner, sexual attraction to dead people, to overcome a feeling of isolation, and low self-esteem. A lot of these are directly related to thoughts, and cognitive behavioral therapy would suggest seeking treatment to change the thoughts you have that lead to these feelings. An example of this might include learning to talk back to the thoughts that you have that suggest this is an appropriate action to take. Another article I found online suggested social skills training so someone would be better able to interact with people. This may include working on issues like developing intimacy, increasing conversational skills, and learning how to be more appropriately assertive. And lastly, orgasmic reconditioning. This is a technique in which people are trained to masturbate to a more appropriate stimulus. So if you're someone who's struggling with these thoughts, don't let them get the best of you. Get help. So remember, stay sexy and don't f dead people. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. I've got a lot of content in production and I don't want you to miss out. So go ahead and click that subscribe button. And in the meantime, check out one of these other videos. And don't forget to send me your questions about sex to thomastalksabout@gmail.com.